Hey guys, what's up? I kind of wanted to, this is a bit more of an off-the-cuff video. I wanted to talk a bit about, you've seen the title, right? And it's a bit inflammatory. I wanted to talk a bit about like fan games, right? And indie titles and game development and all that stuff. And I kind of wanted to talk about the monetization of them, what it means to make money from them, the ethics involved in that, and just kind of the pushback that I sometimes see in relation to that, which can confuse me for multiple reasons, right? So first things first, I want to establish, because now I develop games now, like I work on my own game. I've made a few games like now just on my own, just like to be blunt. So I have some experience making them now. Game development takes a very long time. That's the first thing I can say. Game dev is long. Even making update videos is long, because while you work on those update videos, you're just thinking, man, just work on the game. Do you know what I mean? It can be expensive. It can be a lot, right? Something that interests me though is that there is a firm line drawn in that, you shouldn't monetize these things, right? Now, I don't mean that in the sense of put a paywall behind your demo or put a paywall behind purchasing the fan game, right? But I've seen situations, right, where as in it'll be disparaged, right? It's almost looked down on. But sometimes I see these artists, right? And for the record, I don't look down on this stuff. I'll make my perspective clear in a second. And it's like you see all these fan art and these characters are copyrighted, right? And whether it's NSFW or not, right? All of these characters are copyrighted, right? I see fan remixes. The original song does have copyright on it, right? You know what I mean? I see YouTubers and they're stealing art in their thumbnails, which isn't good. That's a bad example of it, right? The YouTubers, they're playing a copyrighted game. They are like playing somebody else's music in the background. I do it for the record, right? I'm probably got Joey Badass in the background of this or something like that. No, it's some Mapiano mix, right? And so I see that and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool, that's interesting, that makes sense. I see Patreons, I see Ko-Fis, I see commissions over all this stuff. What fascinates me though is that like game dev is the line, right? And sometimes I ask myself, well, where did this come from? When did that happen? How did that thingy itself? Now, I'm first going to open with my perspective. I'm a big believer in art belongs to the masses, right? What that means is I don't really believe in copyright, right? When I'm done with NIXIE, I'm just going to release. You guys can have the code. You guys can have the assets. Because, what value, what do I get from, gatekeeping all of that stuff? If someone could make something better than me with the assets I have, do it, right? Have fun and do it, right? That's what's interesting to me, though, right? That, we gatekeep that. That's, and obviously copyright, and these conversations I think derive from, well, we don't want these projects to shut down. These mass media corporations, right, they own the rights to these properties. You don't want a fan game to shut down. You don't. I've seen these situations. I believe there was Other M. There's a lot of Mario projects. Nintendo are notorious for shutting down Pokemon ROM hacks and fan games and all the fan development. Sonic's a bit more liberal with it, but even then, Omens had its own, I'm not sure if people have heard Sonic Omens. That fan game had its own situation where it's we might have to do something at some point. And so that just interests me a little bit, because whenever people are pushing back against that stuff, all I see is so you're almost acting in service of the corporation, right? Because those are the corporate interests. You can't do that. That's the corporation's copyright. And it's since when were you a shill? You think that corporation cares about you? I love Sonic. I think Sonic makes some of the coolest games of all time. Sonic is part of the reason I make games. Miz is the pixel artist I work with the most, right? You know how many times we have been working on an animation, and the first thing I send him is, this Sonic game, right? So I was thinking something like this. So I want to stress, some of my favorite games of all time are Sonic games. I think they're creative. I think they're fascinating. They are incredible stuff, and people overhate Sonic way too much. From a creative perspective, Sonic is one of the greatest video game franchises of all time. I stand by that, right? Creatively, right? That's my asterisk, right? Right. And it's like, sometimes I'll see these incredible projects and I know what goes into them now, right? Like, yeah, programming is tough. Modeling is long. Animating is long, right? All of these things. And obviously a lot of these projects like fall through after a while because, you know, they can't monetarily sustain them. And now I'm not saying put a paywall, everyone needs to put a paywall, like capitalize. Because, you know, look, I'm anti-capitalistic, all that stuff. I'm not in support of, you know, let's put, yeah, man, this is my Sonic fan game. I call it Sonic Pursuit. I'm going to charge you £80. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. You know, game devs need support too. No. But like in the same vein that like you would see like a YouTube video monetized, or you'd see a Patreon around getting updates on like an existing property. Fam, like I've seen, do you know how many NSFW Patreons that are just like not original characters, but just people drawing other stuff? So quietly, I don't have an issue with that. Like I really don't. I think what interests me again is that game dev is the line, right? Like what makes game dev inherently different in that situation, right? If I was working on, and it's interesting because game dev consolidates so much of it. Game dev is art, game dev is animation, game dev is, you know, what's it called? Game dev is art, game dev is animation, game dev is music, it is game feel, it's obviously playing a game, right? It's UI design, it's so much, it consolidates so many different things, you know? It's like you're playing a film that, you know, your player can mess up. You know, it's a very difficult process and it takes so long. So I guess the question I kind of wanted to ask with this video, and I do have my own set of answers to this, is why is that the case? Why is that where we draw the line? Because I think it has something to do with corporate interest and the fear of, one, creators getting ahead of themselves and going, yeah, man, you're going to have to pay £5 to play this game, right? And obviously they're using someone else's existing property, right? But also, like, you know, the fear that corporations will come down and then we won't have anything, right? But my first thing with that is, well, that's the fault of the corporation, right? Like, it's not, if I make, like, for context, right? Like, I'm trying to, like, work on, like, a Sonic Battle, like, fan project on the side, right? Just recreationally, just because whenever I'm waiting for like stuff to come back, I usually just like work on something else, and well, I won't work on the game for a while. And I was like, I want to keep my programming sharp, so I'm like, okay, I'll work on this on the side. Why not, right? And I'm not saying this to say, oh yeah, so welcome to the Patreon, man. You guys are gonna see some Sonic Battle updates. No. You can subscribe to the Patreon if you do want to see NIXIE updates, but sometimes. But like, it's interesting to me that like that is like a thing, you know, like that is where we draw the line. Like if the problem is the corporations, that's not the fault of the creator, that's the fault of the corporation, right? I'm also, and this is going back to like my more leftist perspective, right? I think art belongs to the masses, right? There's so many incredible projects that prove that. Some of my favorite Sonic games are fan projects. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not even just talking about the remakes or like the remasters or whatever. I mean like the original Sonic fan projects, right? And some of them have to fold and die, not necessarily because like, you know, some of them have to fold and die because people can't like afford it, right? Like I look at Sonic Omens, right? And I'm not saying this to say that Omens is great. I think I tried to play it. It was too strong for me. I couldn't play it. But like these guys worked on whole cutscenes and got voice actors and made these giant sprawling levels, right? And not only did people shit on it pretty bad, but people got on their case about having like, or is it like a Patreon, right? And wanting to be paid a little for their work. And I'm quietly sitting here like, bro, are you serious? Like, do you know how much effort goes into these things? And so where I asked the question, where do we draw the line and why do we draw the line at game development, right? And is it wholly driven by fear of these corporational entities? Or are we afraid that fans will ultimately end up mimicking these corporations and begin to monetize heavily? Because really, like, this goes back to the whole point, right? I mean, this is a critique of capitalism. And also we have to ask ourselves, well, we're just trying, surely they're just imitating the corporation in question. And that's, again, going back to the issue is the corporation, the issue is the institution, surely not? All right, so the video is done. I recorded it, I rendered it, I uploaded it. I came back, right, while editing it, because I was like, I actually got a bit more to say about this. I actually do have a bit more. This might be a more in-depth kind of off-the-cuff video, because it's actually way more complicated than I'm even leading on in this video, right? We talk about this idea because obviously this is a point that came up. I put out a poll, right? I see kind of some of what the conversation is, right? And one of the perspectives was, okay, but when it's your IP, do you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, this copyright is designed to protect you, right? You're the one that's going to be protected by this. And it's like, well, first of all, right, already established my point. You guys can use all the resources you want and make whatever you want with NIXIE, first and foremost, right? So you're not talking about me, right? But even for the average person, let's speak from their perspective. Who are they protecting themselves from when they get their stuff copyrighted? Because they're not protecting their stuff from me. They're not protecting their stuff from Lil Jimmy, who's 11 years old and is making little sprite animations on YouTube. They're not protecting themselves from the 15 to 16-year-old guy making discussions online and playing their game or playing music in the background. They're not protecting themselves from those people. They're protecting themselves from big business. They're protecting themselves from these corporations that the second they release something on their platform, be it Spotify, be it the Nintendo Switch, be it like whatever platform, they know, like if they don't own it, they're gonna come through like, hey man, hey, you dropping on our stuff? I think this is ours now. Like, you know, that Hulk Hogan energy where it's like, yeah, I don't think that's gonna work for me, brother. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of what they're trying to do. They're not protecting themselves from fans. Fans, please. You know, some of the greatest experiences that I have ever had, I don't want to mean to make all of this about Sonic, but Sonic's such a great example for it, right? The fan content has greatly enhanced people's appreciation for the character and the brand, right? Whether that's something as grandiose as and groundbreaking as Project 06 to at least the stuff I grew up on. I grew up on, again, Naruto Unleashed. I grew up on Final Fantasy X7, like Final Fantasy Sonic X 6 and 5 and 7, like all of that stuff. I grew up on Ultimate Flash Sonic. All of these games, right? all this fan content, right? That's not even getting into stuff I watched on YouTube, right? This stuff enhanced my enjoyment and appreciation of the brand. And ultimately, that would ultimately go on to influence the brand. Sure, why not? But many of us would say that was in a positive way. And I don't see the logic in kind of limiting and arbitrarily trying to limit and kind of, you know, put a stranglehold on what art is supposed to look like. Because in doing so, you limit what art can inherently be. That's the kind of disadvantage of, I'm not going to say, it's not about the monetization of art inherently, but much more the privatization of it, right? And privatizing these things. And it seems like, obviously gaming is ridiculously profitable now, right? You know, like I believe it was named one of the most profitable entertainment industries of all time, right? But it's like, it's the privatization of gaming, right? It's the privatization of games. And that inherent privatization is what, I try saying privatization 3 times in a row. It's not fun. But it's inherently by privatizing those games and those experiences, right, and these characters and these IPs, that you inherently limit what these characters can do. And I think what was part of the appeal for Sonic was, for better or worse, I'm gonna make a video about this, existential, you know, but it's like Sonic consolidated so much in those 2000s that the fans just kind of did whatever because the series was doing whatever, whether it was through the comics, through the games, through the multimedia, whatever. It was constantly doing something different. And so I think in that sense, that's part of why like Sonic speaks to so many different artists and so many different types of people. It's because it reinvented itself in a way that it could probably, there is a Sonic, I believe this firmly with a passion, right? There is a Sonic thing out there for someone out there. Everybody has one Sonic thing they're like, that's cool. I could tolerate that. I could watch that. That's my perspective. But you don't get that if you arbitrarily limit what people can create, right? You don't get that. You don't get a Spider-Verse, right? People love Spider-Verse, yeah? The guy that made Spider-Man didn't make Spider-Verse. A big marketing tactic these days is like, you know, by the original creator, artistic integrity. God rest Akira Toriyama's soul, right? Wasn't a perfect guy, but God rest his soul, right? He made Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is incredible. He worked on Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is incredible. He worked on Dragon Quest. I think it's called Sandland, Jocko. Great stuff, right? You know what I mean? And I wouldn't trust a lot of fans to steer the direction of this series, for the record. I've seen some of their stuff. But Dragon Ball isn't over because Toriyama isn't involved anymore. GT had great ideas. Super, a lot of people love Super. A lot of the things that people like from Super were Toei ideas. Now ironically, that's kind of feeding in the opposite direction of like the corporation. But the point I'm making is like, we have almost created a culture, and I think it's a capitalist trick, if you want me to be very transparent, in kind of deifying and idolizing these original creators and being like, you're the sole reason that everything is perfect. And it's like, there are teams. There are so many different people going into the things that we like that, like, even if you removed one element, it's not the same. For the Boondocks fans watching this video, I'm sure you're hyper aware of that. So like, I guess one of the points that I kind of wanted to interject in this video while the whole thing is going on, because I'm very chill in this video, right? But this one's a bit more right? You know, one of the points I want to key in on is, one, the privatization of art is what's inherently limiting what can be created. Two, like, people like indie creators and small creators and businesses or whatever, the reason they are so finicky about their copyright isn't because they think they're gonna be screwed over by you, small-time creator, guy watching this YouTube video, whatever. They're afraid they're gonna be screwed over by Walt Disney. They're afraid they're gonna be screwed over by Netflix. They're afraid they're gonna be screwed over by Nintendo. And that's who they're afraid of, right? Everybody likes to say, well, that's why you should just make your own IP and just make your own indie. And hey, I hate to tell you this, right? That takes a lot of time. And I'm not saying that to say that, like, hey man, if you're about it, you're about it, and if you're not, you're not. But like, going back to this point, right? I have seen a cavalcade of artists that solely just draw from other IPs. They get so much support, they get so many commissions, they get so much Patreon support and all this stuff, and I am happy for them. I celebrate it, I encourage it. That is how it should be, right, in my opinion. Now, obviously, in an ideal world, well, my ideal world, I'm biased, you know, you get rid of all the profit, right, and people are just making art because they enjoy art, and there's no privatization of art, right, because there would be, instead of art being made with the incentive of finances, it would be made because of passion, and people are genuinely passionate about these small scale ideas that they want to bring to the table, right? That's the ideal. You know, but while we live in this capitalistic society, while we live in the world in which we live, I think there's a lot of value in trying to kind of deprivatize art as much as humanly possible, because that's what helps us get to that point. And that means deconstructing how we idolize specific creators and creatives within creative teams or whatever process, right? That means, you know, being a bit more liberal, right, with how you engage with copyrighted material, and maybe even your own, you know? Now, obviously, I don't say that to say, oh, it's so easy, right? This is gonna be easy money. We love to see it. But anywho, okay, I'm gonna stop. That's really bad. But like, I say that to say, look, that's kind of what I think could be beneficial, right? Because there are so many cool things that I never would have seen or never would have encountered if I had this rigid, this is how it's supposed to be, or this privatized, brand-oriented perspective on what art was supposed to look like, right? Art is liberating, it is freedom, it's supposed to be free. Now, quote unquote free market, right? You know what I mean? Would dictate that some art is to be privatized and some art isn't to be touched. But truthfully, I don't believe the fear is that these creators are just gonna be like so money hungry and obsessive that they'll lose sight of doing it because they're passionate about it, because really that's a falsehood, right? They're doing it because they love it and they just want to sustain themselves. I think truly the fear is we recognize how these big business capitalistic institutions function, and we fear that for these smaller creators, right? That they'll get either sucked up into it or sucked up by it, right? And that is a genuine fear that I do understand, but that is not the fault of the creator. That is the fault of the institution. And if a situation where we have to suddenly ask bigger questions about how we feel to cooperate with these institutions arises, then yeah, I'm very open to that being the situation. So yeah, I don't know. That's my little addendum, my little addition to this video. I say little, it's been like 10 minutes. All right, cool. Back to the video. Stay safe, yeah. Peace. I just go back to, and the reason I kind of maintain this art belongs to the masses perspective, right, is because you never know what creative things can be created unless you let people create. You know, I think the heavy monetization of art has really like hampered creative freedom. It's hampered like our ability to kind of just like be free, to be honest, just be free creatively and experiment with ideas and just go crazy, right? One of my favorite channels, I don't agree with him with everything, and I don't even think, like, I have some issues with this game, right? But one of my favorite channels is this channel, I think it's called Bane Studio, right? And they're working on Sonic Momentum, and they chronicle their journey creating the game, and it's so fascinating and it's so interesting. But I know in my head, like, you're doing so much work on this, and it sucks that you can't really be supported on this, can you? And that doesn't mean in the, because yeah, the game is still free. It's free on web browsers. It's free. You can download it right now. I'll even link it in the description. But like, it's a shame to me that like I see all of these projects that people are putting so much effort in, and we can't support those projects, right? Like, it would be morally iffy if someone made like a Sonic Riders X Patreon, right, for instance, and said, hey, if you guys want to support what we're doing here, like, or support development, you can like support on Patreon here. There are so many fan projects that I would do this for. Are you crazy? Right? Are you absolutely? And I just think it's a shame, right? And it's a shame to me that it's looked down on, but it's also a shame that like we are so, going back to that point, we are so fearful of corporations coming down and clamping down with their copyright, quote unquote, right? That like we almost limit like, because obviously like art is hard, right? And we limit how artists can sustain themselves, right? Or build themselves up, or build a name for themselves, whatever, right? Can sustain themselves while working on these projects. I think it's a real shame. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I think it's genuinely a real shame that like there are so many projects that will either not be completed, or these passion projects that get worked on, and like I'll hear these critiques, right? And they'll be like, oh man, everybody starts a 3D Sonic project and then it ends, right? And I'm like, yeah, they stop because like it's time consuming, right? It's absolutely time consuming. I'm working on a 2D game right now. Bloody time consuming. Bloody time consuming. It's very time consuming, right? And so obviously, and I'm not so, come on, you can't be that much of a shill to capitalism and all these systems that you go, well, if you can't do it for free, I guess you're not really about it. What? Like, what? While some of these people are broke, nah. It's just, I just don't buy that. I just think it's ridiculous, right? And I want to stress, this isn't about me going, yeah, man, all right, let me time to open up the Patreon. I call it Sonic Battle DX, man. Guys, I want you guys to keep a good lookout, right? It's got nothing to do with that, and it has everything, and I mean everything, to do with just me going like, what's the motive here? Do you know what I mean? Like, why not? If it's okay for the artists, if it's okay for the musicians, if it's okay for the animators, why is game dev where we draw the line? Are you just afraid? Have you just been conditioned? Or like, and what are you afraid that these small scale like artists and whatnot are gonna like be hyper capitalistic with it if they ask for support in some areas? Or are we afraid that they're going to either imitate these corporations that we are ultimately defending, or these corporations are going to shut down everything? Because to me, it all goes back down to those corporations to begin with. Anyway, that's my spiel, I guess. I just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit because I don't know. I don't understand it, man. Like it boggles my mind. This is something I wanted to talk about while like I work on like NIXIE and all these other projects. You guys will see them popping up on screen. Ironically, if you do want to support NIXIE and all the stuff I do, you can subscribe to the Patreon. Obviously, we have the food bank. What's it called? What else do we do here? I make leftist political commentary videos. I make commentaries on shows. I just do what I want here. I have a second channel about Ace Attorney. Gosh, what else do? I do a bunch of stuff. So basically, if you want to support me, you can. But never forget that art belongs to the masses, and no one can take away your creative drive. If you got something to create it. Don't be afraid, man. And if anybody is getting on your case about you needing to sustain themselves, they're a corporate shill. Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye. Yeah.